back to The Journey. We are very excited today to give you a double blessing because I have two people with us who are going to share their stories, both of them. We have Jan and Sean Hussle, and so I welcome you to The Journey.
Thanks, we're glad to be here.
Thanks.
Thank you so much for coming. You know, I've seen you at almost every prayer service I've been to, and masses and everything, and I'm so curious to hear your whole story. And so I'm hoping that we can get to that. I always like to start by saying, how did you get here to St. Joseph? What was your journey or path to come to this parish?
We came here when I was expecting Sean. I was 6.5 months pregnant. We moved here from Colorado, and we checked out a few parishes as we were checking out housing, and we picked St. Joseph's. And we just really fit in as soon as we were here. Coffee and donuts, people were coming up and introducing themselves, and it was just a very friendly, warm parish. So
well, that's a wonderful commercial. And you have nothing to say about that, do you? Because you weren't around. Well, you know, we hope that that's always going to be the case here at St. Joe's. But as a I can say a longtime member now, what kinds of things have you gotten involved in? What have been your ministries? I have a feeling it's quite a long list.
We do have a rather long list.
And you don't have to give them all, but maybe your favorites.
We started the family movie night with the Knights of Columbus, and I would make spaghetti for 125 people, and we'd have it was $1. And finally we branched out into having plain sauce and meat sauce, and then we branched out into bring a plate of desserts and we'll share, you know, kind of. But that was fun, and we used to do the Christmas party for the Knights. Father Joe asked us to be involved with the Adoration Committee. We did that for years. Then we passed that on, and then it got passed back to us, so we're involved in that now. But lots of different things.
Have you been involved with some things too, Sean?
Yeah, I was involved with Columbia Squires, which is the youth group of the Knights of Columbus.
Mm-hmm.
Altar serving.
Yeah, altar serving. I can't think of any others, but
yeah, he's been involved in different things right along the way.
Yeah, well, good for you. Now, what prompted you to want to start the dinners or, you know, get involved and do all of these things? Where did that come from?
We moved a lot. We moved after we were married. We moved 5 times in 10 years, from one coast to the other and back again.
Wow.
And we looked on church as the one consistent thing. Everywhere we moved, we always belonged to the Catholic, and it was always the same. So we decided to just throw ourselves in and be involved, and we encouraged our kids to be involved, and they're still involved with their own families. So it's worked out well for us.
Well, that's exciting, and I think it's not necessarily something that everybody thinks of is to sort of look for church as the center of their lives anymore. And, you know, that's gotten kind of sad.
Yeah.
I mean, it reminds me, as an Army brat, we moved a lot too. And the one consistent thing, besides our relatives who never moved, was church. So, you know, I wish for that for more people, because it's like you said, it's a stabilizing piece in our lives.
And we need that, yeah.
Now, the church is a stabilizing piece, but God is what it's all about. So can you tell me a little about how you grew up, and then maybe you could tell me a little bit about your story. How did you grow up into the church? Were your parents churchgoers? Were they believers?
My great-grandmother was a nun who had to leave the order because of poor health. She got married and had 4 kids, and then she died. It was my grandmother.
There's a story too.
It was my grandmother, then my mom, very daily mass goers. My father was not Catholic. My father had 2 uncles who were Episcopalian ministers, and my grandmother on that side was not keen on Catholics. But my father, always true to his word, had promised that he would raise us Catholic, and he did, like he did everything else in his life, full force. And I remember in high school, he always went to Mass with us. He said, well, I'll get to that later. When I was in high school, he would listen to me. He'd ask me what went on in religion class and everything, and I would tell him. And we got a teacher who was a little not quite as good as he should have been. And my dad would argue the Catholic position. And I would tell him what the teacher was saying, and my dad would study and do all the reading, and he would tell me what I was supposed to know and what I was supposed to be believing. And I think that had a large part of why he finally came over to the church. He waited till his mother died, and then he said he became Catholic because he was tired of people stepping on him when they went to communion. So he wanted to go too.
There's a reason for it.
But I credit my dad with a lot of my faith, because though my mother and grandmother just were there and steady throughout, my dad didn't understand why Catholics didn't know their scripture better. And he knew his, and he would kind of teach it to us, and just little ways of adding to our faith.
So you had a good foundation from the very beginning, it
I
sounds
did.
like. And that's rare. I hear so many stories where it's the mom or the grandmother, although your grandmother sort of started things off, great-grandmother, but what a wonderful foundation for you.
I was very lucky.
Now,
very
how
blessed.
did that carry through when you were raising your kids? Did you follow in their footsteps? Or?
Yeah, we just never missed a Sunday, vacation or not, no matter where we moved, no matter what country we were in. I credit my grandmother's and my mother's prayers for having all of my children still stay so firm in the faith. I had 5 children, and they're all very strong Catholics to this day, which I'm told is a rarity.
Yes, from everything I've heard it is.
Yeah, but they're very good. And at one point I homeschooled my 3 sons. They were the youngest 3, and took on their religious education as well, because I didn't think they were getting a strong enough education in their faith, and I wanted it more.
Well, good for you. Well, speaking of sons, let's hear about one. Sean, what do you remember growing up about your faith and church? And
I just remember, I just like coming here as a kid and like just going through, just coming as a family and just making a big deal of coming to Mass every Sunday.
So you remember doing that from way little all the way through, huh?
It's always a big deal. Got dressed up in your best, right?
And you homeschooled Sean, did
Yes.
you? Okay. So how many years did you do that? You said a few years.
Sean, from the time he was 4th grade, Kevin, his entire career was homeschooled, and my oldest son, Michael, was in high school at the time, and he begged me to homeschool him. And finally, when one of his teachers came to me and said, every day I have an argument with Michael. I think it was on history. And she said, and he's correct, but this is the way I have to teach it. So she said, I suggest you homeschool him. And I did, and he ended up majoring in history and theology. But I did have it out with him. I said, I don't think I can homeschool you. He was in high school. You know how high school kids are. He was a little on the stubborn side, maybe. I don't know. But I said, if I'm going to homeschool you, you really have to cooperate, or you're back in Liberty. And I got up the first day, and he was already downstairs at 7 in the morning, tie, shirt, at the desk in the living room, and just doing the work that I had already laid out for him.
That really doesn't happen anymore.
He really wanted to be homeschooled.
Wow.
And he did a good job of it.
Well, what a gift. What a gift you were able to do that, and he wanted to, and they're all still practicing in the faith.
Oh yes, very much so.
Well, I know you've got a special story that you want to share as well, how God has really worked in your family's life and with Sean. So who wants to tell the story?
Yes, let's start.
You want me to start? All right. Sean was born 3 weeks early, and just something wasn't quite right, but the doctors never said anything. He would wake up 7 to 9 times a night for the first 10 months.
Oh,
And
poor mama.
yeah, that's why my hair is this color, you know. But I kept saying, there's just something not right.
Mm-hmm.
And it turns out he had a profound sensory neural loss of hearing. The nerve in his ear was dead. Even a cochlear implant would not help the situation. And when he would wake up, he just wanted to be able to see that there was somebody there with him.
Sure.
And anyway, when we finally figured out what was going on, it made life a lot easier. But he was 2.5 before he was diagnosed. And as I said, it was a sensory neural loss. He had a little tiny bit of hearing in his right ear. So we had a hearing aid for that ear, and I will never forget bringing him home from Johns Hopkins. And he had his hearing aid in for the first time. And the kids used to chase him from the kitchen, dining room, living room, front door, up the hallway, and it just made this big circle. And they'd roar, and he'd run smiling. Well, this time they did it, and he was running terrified. He had never been able to hear them roaring at him before.
Oh my goodness.
He didn't know what it was. He just, so.
What a scary, happy moment.
But when he started to speak, he kept saying, Mom, Mom, Mom. I swore I was going to change my name and say,
oh, that was the right word.
Be careful what you wish for. But it was wonderful to hear. Do you remember anything?
I remember, the biggest thing I remember is like where I was when I started to hear. When she was coming home from, I guess I don't know if it was
from Medjugorje?
From Medjugorje. And I heard the garage door go up, and I was.
And he was refusing to wear his hearing aid. He would sign to us that it was too loud. He had gone to the Maryland School for the Deaf in Frederick to learn sign. Mm-hmm. So, sorry.
And anyway, I remember, I can't remember who else was in the house with me, but I remember, I think it was some of my siblings that I took Mommy home, and
he had never put 2 words together. Literally had not been able to put 2 words in the same sentence. So that he said "Mommy home" was wonderful in itself. But that he heard it without his hearing aid was bigger.
I also remember complaining about how loud my hearing aid was, because what was my hearing level like?
He could hear a jackhammer without his hearing aid. Mm-hmm. Before all this, with his right ear, his good ear, but conversational levels, no. Mm-hmm. And a garage door going up,
mm-hmm. I just imagine a loud, an amplified noise, and
it must have been awfully scary, wasn't it? Wow.
And what was funny is we had to have him tested, of course, then, and he had been tested at Johns Hopkins, at the University of Miami Center for Tactile Speech. We had a private otolaryngologist test him, but now the school system wanted to test him, so they paid for it. I said fine, and we had to teach him to respond to a sound. I would hide around a corner and play a sound on a keyboard. It was just like hit one note. And if he heard it, he was supposed to put a block in a pail. Mm-hmm. And he did that. And so you can tell him about the test.
Johns Hopkins?
No, the one that you went to and it took forever.
Was that the one that was in the booth?
Yes.
Okay. I remember just being really long testing, and I was just so frustrated because it was such a long time ago. Being 3 years old,
tears were running down his little cheeks.
I remember it was being in this small little room, one light and this one-way mirror type thing, and I parents were far away from me. I couldn't, out of sight. I was
They
terrified.
couldn't
At 3 years
understand.
old, I can't imagine.
They couldn't figure it out, how he was able to do this test, because they figured we were signaling him somehow.
Oh,
So they made us leave the room, so he was there all by himself. And then they changed up to the test to stuff we've never practiced before, so. But you remember it.
I remember being terrified. No, not terrified, but just being done.
yeah. Done. I'm done with this. Yeah. So, you attribute the healing. Tell us that part.
A trip to Medjugorje. It's, my mom and dad came out, I guess it was 1990. It was Palm Sunday. They came to visit us, and that one week there was an ad in the bulletin for anybody that wanted to go to Medjugorje, that a trip was being put together. And my mother wanted to go. My dad had Parkinson's disease, and she wanted to take him there. She knew all about it. She knew everything there was to know. I knew little bits, but I had no desire to leave my kids, 4 at the time, and go to Medjugorje. So anyway, she bought the tickets and then realized, in looking into it, that it was something my dad wasn't going to be able to do. It was a very rocky paths, and you couldn't do a wheelchair to the places, and it would be too hard for him. So she said, well, you have to go with me. I was like, sure. I'll go. I didn't really want to. Matter of fact, I put off getting my passport till the very end, and it made it on time, so I thought, darn, all right. So I went to Medjugorje, and it was a place where, like I said, I really didn't believe anything. But as soon as you stepped off, there was a palpable feeling. You could feel something special about the place. And I prayed not for Sean's healing, because when he had been tested, I prayed that God's will be done. Not that he be healed, and not that his hearing would be fine, or I just prayed God's will be done. So when I went to Medjugorje, I wanted so much to pray for his healing, but I made a commitment, and I said, thy will be done, and help Sean have the best life he can have. And I honestly believed that would happen. But it wasn't until we came home and he could put words together, and could hear the garage door, could hear all of us, that we knew. Even before we had the tests done, we knew he could hear. But having the otolaryngologist come out to us afterwards and say, we can't explain this other than a miracle. Your son's hearing is normal. So.
I can't imagine what that must have been like for both of you.
Well, a year before that, we left the building crying for a different reason, because we had just found out.
Sure.
It had been confirmed to us that he was deaf. And then a year later, that a miracle had occurred.
So many people pray for miracles. What would you say to them? Having
praying.
Experienced, go ahead, I'm sorry.
Keep praying. Miracles happen. And big miracles and little miracles, I've seen them happen. If you're really looking for them, you see them. And the big miracle in the family, really, Sean's we can see, we can measure. But I look at my other kids too and see the miracle. I have one that was a missionary in the Amazon region of Peru. I mean, not a short time missionary, for years. I have another one that will be, she works with different parishes to, do different things. Both my sons are very, very involved in their churches and lead men's groups. And it's just, I have 2 sons that are first responders. And their patients that they work with are lucky enough that my sons will contact us, say a prayer quick. I have an infant who blah, 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 and the whole family just drops everything and starts praying. In fact, that's our family thread is mostly about prayer. Mm-hmm. It's like, pray for this, pray for that. And
so really what you're saying is that the miracle you received has given you even more commitment to pray for other people, and that you probably don't know all the miracles that
Right.
have come from it.
Right.
Right?
Right.
I mean,
Yeah.
here's a miracle right in front of us, and which people need to hear about. I mean, your journey today is very important because there's so many people that want that kind of hope. How else have you seen it change you or your family, or have you seen other impacts, or I mean, as if these are not enough, but
Didn't you told me the other day about, was it one of the principals had kind of converted, not really, or changed
There was
his life?
the principal of the elementary school where he was going, and he was getting speech and hearing therapy because he was deaf, so the state had him in speech and hearing therapy. Came up to me one day after Sean's healing and wanted me to explain what happened, what went on, and it just impacted his life so much that he gave up being a principal, and he went on and became very involved in his faith and different things he was doing. Also a Catholic. So.
and those are miracles too.
Yeah.
When we change our path, that's a very important thing. Wow. Well, thank you for sharing that. One of the questions here, any turning points in your journey, and I think we just heard one, right? A huge turning point for other people. So how would you describe other things people can do? I know your life is centered around prayer, and that's been a wonderful gift you've given to other people. I see with the prayer service. What would be some other things that you'd recommend that people do to keep their faith strong?
Just getting involved, even if it's little things at first, like the dinner and movie night, or just getting involved socially, coffee and donuts, socialize, make your groups, find ways to find people of similar beliefs and values right here at church, and make it stronger, build on there.
Yeah, I guess what you're saying is that in those relationships we share who God is, right? I mean, I'm putting words in your mouth. Or
No, that's true. Yep. It's. I remember when they first started doing small groups, small prayer groups or faith groups, I think they called them. My big thing that I loved to do was pray the rosary, and it's like nobody else wanted to pray the rosary. It was, that was my thing that I loved, but it wasn't popular at the time. I think it's gotten more popular. But I remember one of the Marianist brothers calling and saying, I have so-and-so, she's a rosary person like you, so I'm going to put you guys, so a group of us got, and we're still, they've moved away, but we still keep in touch, and we still, do the road, but it was a big impact on all our lives, so.
Now, you just said you were on the radio tell us about that.
My husband and I are the leader and responder on the Family Rosary across the parish on Saturday mornings at 11. Okay. And I collect everybody's prayer intentions. If anybody wants to, write them in the book in the chapel. There's a new book there for prayer intentions, or you can email me through the parish. I'm sure they'll give you my email address. It's jnmadoration@gmail.com. It's real easy, but
there you have it.
But it's very. But send me all your prayer intentions, and we are so happy to pray for everybody.
And the Friday night prayer service
is
a
Together
huge
in
thing.
Prayer.
Together in Prayer.
Goodness.
I always forget the name of it. Oops. But the prayer service. Now, were you instrumental in getting that started?
I wouldn't say instrumental. I think actually it was your husband who really, took it on. But we've been with it since the beginning.
Yeah.
And handing out pamphlets to people as they came in and encouraging people to come, that kind of thing. But it's absolutely beautiful. The music is tremendous. All the, what do they say, smells and bells of the Catholic faith, kind of it's beautiful. Really is.
Yeah, and I see, Sean, you're there. I've seen you there as well.
Yeah.
Well, I really appreciate your time and your story. Can you tell us about the book here?
Sure.
How did that come about?
Well, when I came back from Medjugorje and we found out about Sean's healing, my dad encouraged me to write it down. He wanted to be able to give it to people. So he had this printed up, but also it's been published in 7 countries and 3 languages.
Wow.
So it's about the whole time. I mean, it starts out with my brother saying, as the kids are running through the house, literally through, out and in and out and in, and all the cousins were chasing him, he said, I like Sean, he's different from the others. He's so quiet. And he thought this was a compliment, and to me it was just a dagger, because I knew, this is before we knew he was deaf, but I knew he was deaf. It just, the doctors all said, oh, he doesn't have to talk, he has so many brothers and sisters, they talk for him. But that's not what it was.
Little did he know the story that was going to come. It's called Sean's Blessing, and I don't know how people might get a copy to read, but
I could have some more printed up and drop them in the office or in the back of the someplace in the church, and make it available to people.
So we have a real life miracle that we've heard about and we're looking at and listening to. I really want to thank you, Sean, for being here,
Thanks.
letting us talk about you and having you talk about your miracle. It's such a blessing to hear that, and a lot of people are going to be inspired by your story.
Hopefully inspired to pray.
Thanks be to God. And that's our journey for today. We look forward to the next conversation that we'll have. Get in touch, and it might be you.